The hardest part of learning how to drive manual is to actually pull off from a complete stop. Now the reason why this is so hard is not so complicated, but I'm gonna have to go into it in order to make the next step easier. If you look here in the left hand corner, you have the tachometer. The engine's idling at about 700-800 RPM, give or take. There's nothing compromising the engine's speed. If I step down on the clutch and I put the car in gear and I start to release the clutch, imagine it this way. You have the engine, which is spinning, and you have the clutch. As I'm releasing, coming up off the clutch is getting closer and closer to the spinning engine. There's a lot more details involved, but for simplicity's sake, just imagine it like that. So you have one plate, which is the engine, and it's spinning at that 700-800 idle RPM. And you have the clutch plate, which is getting closer and closer to it. Now, the engine is spinning, the clutch is not. As soon as they begin to make friction, something has to give. Now, two things are either going to happen, or both will happen at the same time. The engine's going to begin to slow down because it meets some resistance, and the clutch, because it's meeting a force, is going to start to move as well. Both of those happen. But if this is spinning and you come off of this too fast and it touches it, the engine's going to continue to lose speed, hit zero, and the car will turn off. That's how you stall. But if the engine plate is spinning and the clutch just barely touches it, not enough to slow it down where it hits zero and the car stalls, but enough for the engine to continue to move and in turn begin to rotate the clutch. As the clutch begins to gain momentum, allowing the engine to spin a little bit more freely, the car will continue to move and pull off. And I'm going to demonstrate this. I'm down on the clutch. The car is in first gear. If you see here, the engine is at 700-800 RPM. As I begin to lift my foot off the clutch, you'll notice two things. Nothing is happening quite yet until that clutch begins to touch the engine. So I'm lifting my foot. Again, nothing. Now eventually, the clutch will start to touch the engine. When that happens, you'll see the tachometer start to ever so slightly dip because the engine's meeting resistance. It can't spin freely in its idle speed any longer. Once that happens, the car starts to pull forward. Now if I come off, that's too much resistance for the engine too soon and the car will turn off. Think of it this way. The clutch is connected to the wheels. So when it makes contact with the engine starts to spin the clutch, the wheels start to move as well. Clutch equals wheels, put it that way. So when you connect the clutch with the engine, the wheels follow along. We'll do that again. Clutch in, put the car in first gear. Start to carefully ease off the clutch until you feel the car either reacting to you or moving forward. Reacting to you by one starting to rumble. That's the engine. That's pretty much the reaction you're getting from both plates touching each other. And the engine losing power. So you're going to get a little bit of rumble there, a little bit of shaking. Because once something starts to roll, it begins to get a lot easier. Because once something starts to roll, it becomes a lot easier to push. So here we go, I'm still lifting. Once I hit the friction point, did you notice that? It wasn't a lot, I went back down on the clutch. But once I hit it, the RPMs began to drop. So I'm going to continue to come off the clutch slowly until you see it. There it is again. When you get to that point where the car begins to move and the RPMs start to drop, if you come off any further from the clutch, the RPMs will continue to drop and you will stall. Hold that position and let the car continue to crawl. We're gonna get to how to make this process a little bit faster, but for now, we'll make the car crawl.